A blessed day, everyone. I am Winmei Hoyohoy, and I am from BSED English 2A. In this video, I'm going to discuss Literature 1, Module 8. First is Hans Christian Andersen. He was a Danish author, although a prolific writer of plays, travelogues, novels, and poems. He is best remembered for his literary fairy. Anderson was born April 2, 1805, and he died on August 4, 1875. His occupation is a writer during the period of Danish Golden Age, and the genres are children's literature travelogue. The novated works are The Little Mermaid, The Ugly Duckling, The Snow Queen, The Emperor's New Clothes. Andersen's fairy tales, consisting of 156 stories across 9 volumes, have been translated into more than 125 languages. They have become embedded in Western collective consciousness, accessible to children as well as presenting lessons of virtue and resilience in the face of adversity for mature readers. His famous fairy tales include The Emperor's New Clothes, The Little Mermaid, The Nightingale, The Steadfast Tin Shoulder, The Red Shoes, The Princess and the Pea, The Snow Queen, The Ugly Duckling, The Little Match Girl, and Thumbelina. His stories has inspired ballet, plays, and animated and live-action films. Next is Grimm's Fairy Tales, originally known as the Children's and Household Tales, by German Kinder und Archman. It is commonly abbreviated as KHM. It's a German collection of fairy tales by the Grimm brothers or Brothers Grimm, Jacob, and Wilhelm. First published on 20 December 1812, Volume 1 of the first edition contained 86 stories, which were followed by 70 more tales, numbered consecutively in the first edition, Volume 2 in 1815. By the seventh edition in 1857, the corpus of tales had expanded to 200 tales and 10 children's legends. It is listed by UNESCO in its Memory of the World Registry. Okay, next is Disney versus Grimm's. Fairy tales have provided a significant source of inspiration for Disney Studios, mainly Walt Disney Animation Studios. Sometimes, Walt Disney Pictures alters gruesome fairy tales in order to make them more appropriate for different age groups, especially children and adults. The silent short cartoons produced at the Laugh of Gram Studio during Walt Disney's early career consisted of humorous modern retelling of traditional stories. Later, Walt Disney and his studio turned to traditional fairy tales as the source short for in the Silly Symphony series and the later animated features such as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, his first full-length feature. After a hiatus from the fairy tale genre, the modern Disney company once more looked to classic fairy tales during the late 80s and 90s, resulting in popular films such as Aladdin, Mulan, The Little Mermaid, and Beauty and the Beast. The following list is an example of the fairy tale films which produced by Disney Company along with their sources inspiration. Some stories, including Cinderella, The Ugly Duckling, have been subject to multiple treatments. Excluded are television series such as The Little Mermaid TV series and sequel of previous fairy tales films such as Cinderella the Second, Dreams Come True, unless explicitly incorporating elements from another traditional story. So next is original versions of children fairy tales. Some original versions of well-known children's fairy tales actually have darker and more gruesome content than the version we are familiar with today. For example, Brothers Grimm fairy tales, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm collected and published a large collection of fairy tales in the early 19th century. Many of these versions were much darker and violent compared to modern adaptation. For instance, the original Cinderella. The stepsisters cut off part of their feet to fit or to try to fit into the glass slipper. Second is the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales. Andersen's stories such as The Little Mermaid and The Snow Queen often had a bittersweet or tragic endings. In the original Little Mermaid, the mermaid sacrificed herself rather than marrying the prince, and she dissolved into a sea foam. Next is Charles Perrault fairy tales. Perrault version of classic The Little Red Riding Hood or The Sleeping Beauty also contain darker elements. In the original Sleeping Beauty, for example, the prince actually finds her asleep and unable to wake her, rapes her, leading to the birth of two children. This original version served as a reminder of the evolution of fairy tales and how they were often much more cautionary and grim in the past. Next is the 1001 Night. It is a collection of Middle Eastern folk tales compiled in Arabic language during the Islamic Golden Age. It is often known in the English as the Arabian Nights, from the first English language edition around 1706 to 1721, which rendered as the title of the Arabian Nights Entertainment. So the language they use is Arabic. The genre of the story is frame story or folklore. The work was collected over many centuries by various authors, translators, and scholars across the West Asia, Central Asia, and South Asia and North Asia. Some tales trace their roots back to ancient and medieval Arabic, Sanskrit, Persians, and Mesopotamia literature. Most tales, however, were originally folk stories from the Abbasid and Mamluk eras, while others, especially the frame story, are probably drawn from the Pahlavi Persian work. Thousand Tales, which in turn may be a translation of older Indian texts. Common to all the edition of the night is a framing device of the story of the ruler Shahryar being narrated by tales by his wife, uh, with one tale told over each night of storytelling. The story proceeds from this original tale. Some are framed within other tales, while some are self-contained. Some editions contain only a few hundred nights of storytelling, while others include 1001 and more. The bulk of the text is in prose, although verse is occasionally used for song and riddles and to express heightened emotion. The most of the poem are single couplets or quatrains, although some are longer. Some of the stories commonly associated with an Arabian Nights, particularly Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp, and Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, were not part of the collection of the original Arabic versions, but were instead added to the collection of French translator by Antoine Galland after he heard from the Syrian writer Hannah Diab during the latter's visit to Paris. Other stories such as the Seven Voyages of Sinbad the Sailor had an independent existence before being added to the collection. Next is The Tale of the Peter Rabbit. It is a children's book written and illustrated by Beatrix Potter that follows a mischievous and disobedient young Peter Rabbit as he gets into and his is changed around the garden of Mr. MacGregor. He escapes and returns home to his mother, who puts him to bed after offering him a chamoy chamomile tea. The tale was written for 5 years old Noel Moore, the son of the Peter's former governors, Annie Carter Moore, in 1893. It was revised and privately printed by Potter in 1901 after several publishers' rejection, but was printed in a trade edition by Frederick Warne at Corporation in 1902. The book was success and multiple reprints were issued in the years immediately following its debut, and it was being translated into 36 languages and with 45 million copies sold. It is one of the best-selling books in history. Next is The Curious George. Is a fictional monkey who is the little character of the series of popular children's picture books written and illustrated by Margaret and H.A. Ray. Various of media, including the film and TV shows, have been passed upon the original book series. So George is described as a good little monkey and always very curious. In the first book, George is caught by the man in the yellow hat and taken from America, or Africa rather, to America, where the two live together. George and the man in the yellow hat become friends, and they are shown going on adventures together. George's first appearance was a monkey named Fairy in the book of Cecily G. and the Nine Monkeys, which was the first published in the French during 1939. In the late years, the popularity of the character led the race to feature George in his own series. Next is Charlotte's Web. It's a book of children literature by American author E.V. White and illustrated by Garth Williams. It was published on October 15, 1952 by Harper and Brothers. The novel tells the story of livestock pig named Wilbur and his friendship with a barn spider named Charlotte. When Wilbur is in danger of being slaughtered by the farmer, Charlotte writes a message in her web praising Wilbur, such as some pig, terrific, radiant, and humble, and to persuade the farm to let him live. Charlotte's Web is considered as a classic of children's literature enjoyed by readers of all ages. The description of the experience of the swinging on a roof swing on the farm is an often a cited example of rhyme in writing, as the space of the sentence reflects of the motion swing. In 2000, Publisher Weekly listed the book as the best-selling children's paperback of all time. Next is Winnie the Pooh, also known as the Edward Bear, Pooh Bear, or simply Pooh. Is a fictional anthropomorphic teddy bear created by English author A. Milne and English illustrator by E. H. Shepard. Winnie the Pooh first appearance by name in a children's story commissioned by London's Evening News for Christmas Eve during 1925. The character is inspired by the stuffed toys that Emile had bought for his son Christopher Robin in Harrods department store, and a bear they had viewed at London Zoo. The first collection of stories about the character was the book Winnie the Pooh during 1926, and this was followed by The House of the Pooh Corner during 1928. Mile also include the poem about the bear in the children's verse book When We Were Very Young during 1924, and many more. And in Now We Are Six, 1927, all four volumes illustrated by E. H. Shepard. The story are set in 100 Ark Wood, which was inspired by 500 Ark Wood in Ashdown Forest in Essex, situated 30 miles or 48 kilometers south London, where the Londoner Mile Country home was located. So that's all for my discussion. Thank you everyone, and God bless us all.